read.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Alvernia Live Chat. We're now live across Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. My name is Dr. Bhavesh Doshi. I'm a senior consultant gastroenterologist at Gastro Health Clinic at Mount Alvernia Hospital. I'm really glad that you've taken time out during your lunch to join us for this discussion. Before we move any further, I'd like to wish everyone a very happy Lunar New Year. Today's topic is relevant because it is on post-Chinese New Year reset. And it's with regards to your gut. I'll be sharing and answering your questions on what can help improve your gut health after festive period. The festive season is often filled with reunion meals, rich dishes, late nights, and perhaps a little bit more indulgence than usual. And if you've been experiencing bloating, acid reflux, sluggish digestion, or just simply feeling off after the celebrations, then you're definitely not alone. Leave any questions that you have in the chat function, and I'll do my best to get it to you today. So, as I mentioned, I'm a senior consultant gastroenterologist, and I have been working as a consultant gastroenterologist for more than 20 years. I can tell you I've had lots of experience personally and from patients with gut issues, particularly after the festive period. So during the festive period, we tend to indulge in fatty foods and rich meals. We might perhaps have a little bit more alcohol than we're supposed to, and some people might even smoke or do other things that might affect their gut. And this leads to a period of turbulence with the gut. So essentially, patients may have imbalance of gut microbiota or bacteria within the gut. They may have increased levels of inflammation in their body, either through oxidative stress from inflammatory foods that they've eaten, such as rich fatty foods. And also this inflammatory process can extend not just within the gut, but also outside the gut, including the bloodstream and the liver. The microbiota within the gut can also get affected by different foods, and we might notice a difference in the diversity of the microbiota within the gut. The oxidative stress can also reduce the intestinal function within the gut, and there are many things that we can do to try to fix these issues. I would say regular exercise, cutting out smoking, reducing alcohol, and returning to the baseline diet are some of the basic things that we can do. Now we have some questions. Here's the first question that we've received from our audience. If I overeat for a few days, does it permanently affect my gut health? I think that's a very relevant question, and the answer is no, it's not permanent. If you've overindulged for a few days, usually the recovery period should be relatively quick. So I'd expect that the recovery should be within 2 weeks. If this has been going on for a long while, then of course the recovery might take a longer period of time. But generally, I would say within 4 weeks, I would expect most patients to have a greater than 50% improvement in their symptoms. So we have another question. Noticed I have been having reflux throughout the Chinese New Year period. Should I take medications, probiotics, or would it go away on its own once I readjust my diet? Again, really good question. And the mechanism of reflux is very complex. Some of the reflux may be because of weight gain. The additional pressure, the weight on the abdomen might be compressing the stomach, and that might cause reflux of gastric contents, including acid in the stomach, up into the esophagus, and hence give reflux symptoms. The best way to get on top of that is going back to your normal diet, regular exercise, and some gradual weight loss. The other reason for the reflux symptoms might be the type of foods that we might be eating. So fatty foods, pastries, alcohol, smoking, all of these things can cause an increase in reflux symptoms. And this is more related to the diet itself. And from that point of view, once you've cut down on those foods, then the reflux symptoms should get better. So ordinarily, I would say that you probably don't need any strong medications for the reflux. If it's a short-lived episode, probiotics can definitely help restore your gut microbiota. So that might be an easy approach to it. Okay, so I hope I've answered that question. Okay, so another question that we've got is, been eating way too much at friend's house for gathering, steamboat, pineapple tarts, bakwa, and sleeping late. Woke up the next day with stomach bloatedness and unable to pass motion easily. How do I feel better? Well, look, I'm not surprised with that diet. It's not going to help with your gut function. So you are definitely going to experience bloating, and you may feel a bit of constipation also because you've not had your fresh fruit and your fiber. The best way to get on top of it is to get back into your normal diet as quickly as possible. One point that I'd like to make also is hydration. Keeping yourself well hydrated does help with your bowel motions. It keeps the motion soft, so you don't end up with hard motions. Sometimes you might need a little bit of medication, just a gentle laxative to help you pass motion. But the best approach is probably dietary change and hydration. Okay. So let's have a look and see if we have another question. Okay, so if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to post it. And I hope I'm speaking loud enough that you can hear me, otherwise I'm going to try harder. Do we have any questions that you'd like to post in? So other than the cutting out the alcohol and going back to a normal diet, regular exercise and hydration, and the fresh fruit and fiber, I think there is some evidence to show that probiotics can be helpful. There are certain lactobacilli and other probiotics that can help restoring gut function after a period of indulgence. So I think probiotics can definitely help. We at Gastro Health often test patients' stools to see what their gut microbiota balance is, and then we would prescribe them probiotics that would match their requirement. So it's not generic probiotics, but specific probiotics depending on their requirement. So we have a question, what's the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic? It's a good question. There's also a symbiotic. A prebiotic is the food or the substance that the bacteria in your gut require to grow. So the good bacteria in your gut, the probiotics, require prebiotics, food, to grow. So one is food, one is the bacteria. The probiotics are the bacteria, the prebiotics are the food. Symbiotics are a combination of both, the prebiotic and the probiotic in one capsule. Yeah, so again, really good question. When do you take the probiotics, and perhaps how do they work, right? Probiotics generally, if you take it with your food or after your food, is probably the best way of taking it. I've taken them myself, and I've taken different formulations. I've personally found that if you take it after your food, you may not experience some of the side effects that you might initially experience when you take a probiotic. And what are these side effects? Some people complain of nausea symptoms when they take probiotics. It's just because of the release of the bacteria within the capsule in the GI tract might cause nausea symptoms. But if it's mixed with food, it tends not to cause that. So I would recommend taking probiotics with or after your meals. The probiotic itself works in many different ways. It breaks down many of the foods that we eat, the fiber, the the vegetables, the whole grains that we eat, into chemicals such as short-chain fatty acids and other antioxidative chemicals that are beneficial not just for the gut intestinal barrier, but also for inflammation in the body. So an example is certain foods, again, fresh fruit, vegetables, are good for fatty liver and inflammation of the liver from fat. So probiotics are helpful, and there are many functions. Another function of probiotics is to improve the gut-brain axis. I'm sure most of you have heard of the gut-brain axis. The gut-brain axis is basically your intestines talking to your brain and your brain talking back to your intestines. Now, if your intestines are unhealthy, if you have a lack of diversity of bacteria in the gut, then this can send signals to the brain to affect your mood. So it can make you feel low in mood, it can generally make you feel tired, lethargic. So improving your gut microbiota with probiotics may help with your mood. So we're going to move on to our next question. Next question, is it normal to feel bloated and constantly have the urge to burp after lunch only? Any ways to reduce such burping urge? Okay, so burping is a complicated thing. I know it sounds simple, but it is quite complicated. Burping can be due to various things. Now, when we eat our food, if we eat very quickly, or some of us just naturally tend to ingest a lot of gas. So when we ingest the gas enters the stomach and eventually needs to get released. To get released, you have to either burp, or the gas might pass from below and you might have to pass wind from below. So sometimes the speed at which you eat and the way that you eat the food tends to produce a lot of burping. Sometimes the type of food that we eat might produce burping. So if we eat foods that tend to ferment, and by the way, foods that ferment are actually very good for us because they have probiotics in its most natural form, and they contain many chemicals like phytochemicals which can be broken down in the gut and be helpful for gut health. But fermented foods can also cause breakdown and release of gas, and that can cause burping. So I would certainly recommend taking fermented foods like yogurt or kimchi, but in moderation. So we have another question. Does enzyme drink supplements help with gut health? So fermented drinks. So I think drinks, there are readily available fermented drinks like kefir and other sort of fermented drinks such as Yakult and Vitagen. I think they're certainly helpful. They help with digestion, and we certainly do recommend them for patients from time to time. Going to move on to the next question. Okay, is fasting a good way to reset? Short-term fasting can be helpful. So we've all heard about intermittent fasting. So short-term, short periods of fasting can definitely help with gut health, can relieve that bloating and that indigestion symptoms. But I think long-term fasting needs to be taken in conjunction with advice from your gastroenterologist. Long-term intermittent fasting or any sort of fasting is probably not recommended for everyone. So I think this is an individual tailored approach and requires further discussion with your gastroenterologist. The next question is, any juice cleansers or detox teas for gut reset? Actually, that's a really good question. I think having any fresh fruit juices, and there's actually some evidence in the literature that certain teas can actually improve the gut health. So I think there is some evidence for it. And if you are used to a particular routine, so if you have a juice cleanse every now and then, or if you drink certain teas that help your gut, then by all means carry on. I think that's not a bad approach. Next question we have is, I always feel bloated and indigestion after full meal, especially in the evening. Does always taking Gaviscon a good solution? Sorry about the grammar, but the answer to this is no. I think taking Gaviscon regularly is not a good idea. I think it's definitely worth getting a checkup, because there might be more organic or structural abnormality in the stomach, like an ulcer or esophagitis inflammation that might be causing the symptoms. Gaviscon is not going to treat that. It's going to relieve the symptoms temporarily, but it's not going to treat the underlying ulcer and the underlying inflammation. So I would definitely not recommend taking Gaviscon long term. If it's for a couple of days and then you don't need it, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so next question. My gut got screwed when I got COVID, maybe from the antiviral medication I took. I'm on Nexium, 1 a day for 2 years now, and can't consume gluten. How do I fix and hopefully come off the PPIs? Okay, many people had many complaints during COVID, and totally understandable. It was an extremely stressful period, and some people have just taken a lot longer to recover from the symptoms that they developed during COVID. Now, Nexium is a proton pump inhibitor. It reduces the acidity in the stomach and hence helps with reflux and indigestion symptoms. Gluten in your diet is slightly different. So gluten is a substance that's found in bread and most of the foods that we eat, pastries, that sort of thing. And in some patients, gluten can cause bloating. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've got a genuine gluten allergy. They may just be sensitive to the gluten, and that's fine if you have that, to avoid some gluten. There are some individuals who do have genuine gluten allergy, which is called celiac disease. That is a diagnosis made by endoscopy. When we do an endoscopy, we take a biopsy from the small intestine, and what gluten does to the small intestine is it forms a complex in the small intestine, which your body recognizes as a foreign object, and it attacks that complex in the small intestine. That causes the small intestine to get extremely inflamed. That is called celiac disease. Now that, thankfully, is not found in the vast majority of people. So gluten sensitivity, which is just a bit of bloating when you eat gluten, can happen, and it's best to avoid gluten when you're going through those symptoms. But you can gradually reintroduce gluten and you should be fine with that. The next question we have is, what do you think about some companies selling detox products or gut improvement products? I have to be honest, I've not done a great deal of research about these products, but what I can tell you is that I personally feel that having a diet which is natural is far better than having any of these commercially available detox products. So if you're going to do detox at home, getting fresh fruit and vegetables and juicing it or eating the fresh fruit, absolutely fine. That's the best way of doing the detox. But if you're going to buy a chemical which has been sitting on the shelf for 6 months, a year, and do detox with that, I'm not so sure that that's going to give you as much benefit as having the fresh products, the fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and having plenty of hydration. So I'm not a big fan of these products that do detox. Okay, so the next question I have is, I snack non-stop during house visits. Is constant grazing worse than eating one big meal? I think you have to do a bit of both. So it's not so much having a large meal in one go. Certainly that's not recommended. That will make indigestion worse. That will make reflux definitely worse. That might make you extremely uncomfortable, give you bloating, and might even make you want to pass motion when you have a large meal because of the reflex action on the colon. On the other hand, having lots of small meals throughout the day, I think as long as the foods that you're eating, the snacks that you're eating are healthy snacks, fruit, vegetable, protein, then that's fine. But if it's snacks like chocolates, crisp, chips, those sort of things, I would probably recommend that you don't. So somewhere in between, minimum of at least 3 meals a day, maybe more, but smaller quantities might be better for people who suffer from reflux. So somewhere in between. Let's have a look at the next question. Okay, this is a good question. When should bloating be a red flag instead of just too much food? Really good question. Now, I would say that if your symptoms are persistent more than 2 to 4 weeks, then I would definitely recommend that you see a doctor to get an assessment done. Now, if you are above the age of 40, I would also recommend that you get an assessment done. If you're under the age of 40, generally the chance of anything sinister underlying this would be less likely, although not impossible, but less likely. So if it's not getting better within 2 to 4 weeks, I will certainly get a checkup done with a gastroenterologist. So I'm going to move on to our next question. And this is on Facebook. Can spicy dishes like curry or chili-based foods irritate the gut lining? Absolutely. Anytime you've eaten chili foods, you'll notice a burning sensation in your mouth. The same thing happens in your gut, all the way throughout. So in your esophagus, causing reflux symptoms, in your stomach, causing indigestion symptoms, in your small and large intestines, causing you to want to go to the toilet, and even causing IBS type symptoms. So certainly I would watch the amount of spicy foods that you have. I would probably cut it down and reduce the overall quantity of spicy foods and the frequency. So we're going to do a quick recap of what we've mentioned so far. So to get your gut health back to normal, try to go back to your normal diet as soon as you can. Try to increase the amount of fruit and fiber in your diet. Keep yourself well hydrated. Cut out the alcohol. Stop smoking. Exercise. We haven't spoken much about exercise, but exercise has a profound implication on gut health. It improves your gut-brain axis. It actually improves your microbiota diversity in your gut and improves your overall gut function. Supplement with some probiotics. You can have some fermented foods like yogurt or kimchi, and certainly have plenty of sleep, because that also affects your gut health. Having a good night's sleep will allow your gut to recover and to allow your body to recover from all the indulgences over the festive period. So just in summary, my name is Bhavesh Doshi. I'm a gastroenterologist at Mount Alvernia Hospital, Gastro Health Clinic, and we've so far spoken about gut health post-festive period and how to recover from that. Okay, so we're going to answer another question. I've always had constipation problems despite eating fruit and vegetables. I sometimes have to rely on laxatives. Is it okay to take laxatives on a frequent basis? Again, we get asked this all the time in the clinic. Some people do need laxatives to pass motion, otherwise they get extremely uncomfortable. Now, often patients come and ask me, what's a regular bowel motion? How frequently should I be going to the toilet? Should I be going once every day? Should I be going 3 times a day? So there isn't any general consensus on this, but I think most of us would accept that going up to 3 times a day or going once every 3 days may be within the normal limits for most people. So if you've always been going once every 3 days, then that's normal for you. That's fine. As long as you don't have any additional symptoms with that constipation, then that's fine. But if you get bloated, if you get uncomfortable, if you feel like you need to pass motion but you can't, and it's an uncomfortable feeling, then by all means, you can take some laxatives. I would suggest, before you do the laxatives, do the fresh fruit and fiber, do the hydration. Remember, you need two. You need the hydration, you need the fiber in your diet to be able to have good, soft stools. If you have lots of fiber but not enough hydration, and we're talking about at least 3 liters of fluid a day in this kind of weather, if you're not having enough hydration, that fiber is just going to turn hard in the colon, and then it's going to become constipation. So short-term laxatives are fine, long-term probably not advisable, and if you are going on it, then I would take something like a soluble fiber, which is a prebiotic, together with some probiotics to help with your gut. Next question we have is, I know vegetables have soluble and insoluble fiber, so we've just spoken about soluble fiber. And what is the difference? Is one better than the other, or do they do different things? Okay, so super question, really good question. Soluble fiber is the fiber that if you dissolve it in water, it remains soluble. So if you leave a glass of water with soluble fiber inside, it will remain water. Insoluble fiber is where if you dissolve the fiber in water and you leave it for a little while, it forms a thick gel, a colloid, and something like fibrogel is insoluble fiber. So both are good for you. So you need to have both. So insoluble fiber in fresh fruit and vegetables gets broken down by bacteria in your gut to release helpful chemicals that are antioxidants. So definitely I would recommend both soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber doesn't cause as much gas and bloating in the long term as insoluble fiber. So if you have insoluble fiber regularly, you might notice that you feel quite bloated from time to time. With soluble fiber, you might notice a little bit of gas and bloating, maybe for the first week, and then it settles down. Your body gets used to it and it adapts to it, so you shouldn't feel that. So that's the general difference. One is not better than the other. I think you need a combination of both. Okay, so the next question. Will it be better in general for our gut health if we cut out consumption of meat altogether? It is said that meat promotes inflammation in the gut. How true is that? Unfortunately, the second part of the question is true. So meat does promote inflammation in the gut, particularly red meat and processed meats. So these two types of meat or meat products are generally not good. I think if you're having it in moderation, maybe once, maybe twice a week, with red meat probably once a week. Chicken, lean pork, I think is probably okay to have it a bit more frequently. Fish is fine. But red meat, things like beef and lamb, I would probably try to keep it down to a minimum or maximum of once a week. The breakdown products of meat create an oxidative stress in the body, so they create inflammation in the colon. And there is plenty of data to show that a diet which is high in red meat and low in fresh fruit and fiber leads to polyps and can lead to cancer. So there is data now to show that. So I would definitely recommend reducing the meat, but at the end of the day, we have to eat a balanced diet. And I think if you have meat in your diet, that's fine, but you've also got to balance it with plenty of fresh fruit and vegetables. The next question we have is, how do you differentiate IBS from gastritis or reflux? Do I need to go to your clinic to run some tests? Sometimes there's an overlap of symptoms. So at least 10 to 15% of patients with IBS will have gastritis, may have reflux symptoms. So there is some degree of overlap between the symptoms. So it's not as easy to differentiate by just Googling it and checking your symptoms. I think if your symptoms are persistent, it's worth getting a checkup. Just by definition, reflux is actually the regurgitation of contents and acid from the stomach into the esophagus. Gastritis, which is inflammation of the lining of the stomach. So different location. Esophagus for reflux, stomach for gastritis. So slightly different, but sometimes hard to distinguish for the individual. So the next question, or the last question we have, is if someone has existing IBS, can festive overeating trigger a flare? Yeah, the short answer to this is yes. I think if you eat certain foods that might promote inflammation in the gut, then you're certainly more likely to get a flare-up of your IBS. So I would be careful if you have existing IBS. Watch what you eat. Perhaps keep yourself hydrated. Take some probiotics before you start eating the rich foods and things. So that might help to prevent a worsening of your symptoms. So thanks everyone for being so forthcoming with your questions. It was really enjoyable to be here. Thanks for joining us today. I've had a lot of fun answering all the great questions everyone has sent us. In case you've missed any segments, we'll also share some of the cut downs of the video on our social media. If you have any specific questions or need specialized advice, feel free to reach out to us at Mount Alvernia Hospital. Follow us on our social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Stay informed for all the exciting season coming up this year. See you again. Bye.